Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power. Hello and welcome to Your Ultimate Life, the podcast I created to help you live a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with your skills, your gifts, and your life experience. Today, I'm blessed to have a special guest, Lora Lapiz. Lora, welcome to the show.
Thank you. An honor to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. You know, we've been talking about getting together and having you on for, a little while. And so I'm glad that we finally been able to put that together. I don't do a introduction per se, because a lot of that doesn't mean anything to people anyway. And so everything that you are and the coolness that you have will come out as we sort of go through the conversation. The first thing I'd like you to talk about in any way you want to is the kind of people that are attracted to this show are people that are conscious, and by conscious, aware, intentionally creating, that sort of thing. And so I like to give you a chance to just talk about that. Tell me the different ways, and you don't need to be modest, that Lora chooses to add good or create good in the world.
So one of the ways that I love to create good in the world is, one, how can we always find beauty in our day? And I mean, it could be anything from a flower, a leaf that's rustling in the wind, to making a stranger's day a smile, asking them what was the best part of their day, because most people are so heads down in their phones and other stuff that to create that true deep connection and actually to be seen and just acknowledge these days that like you are present and you're a human being, acknowledging that they even exist is something that the world seems to be missing a lot of today. And when we walk around with presence, it starts to create that ripple effect in your world, in your community, and so forth. And then from that place, you can then add a new perspective that people may not be expecting. And when we can add a perspective that is new, it opens our minds and our curiosity to what's also possible in this world. Because even if you're having a bad day, there's still something very good that's likely going on in your world that day.
You know, that picture behind you is a beautiful sunset. And as you were describing simple beauties of a flower or a leaf or a beach or anything else, it struck me. A lot of people, I'll have guests and they'll have no background, or they'll have the bookcase or whatever happens to be behind them. But you decided to put a nice picture up. Tell me what that picture, or whether it's not that specific picture, but something like that. What is noticing that beauty that's around us? And you did two separate things. You talked about the beauty of nature, and you also talked about the beauty of people. And we can do those separately. But tell me what that picture does for you. Why is that important?
So I make a point in my life to spend an hour in nature every day. So it could be eating a meal outside. It can be sitting and having a conversation outside. But it's the manner of that nature brings all the harmonic frequencies to us. And when I mention beauty in that way, there's a concept called awe. And it's a state of being. And when we open up our perception really large, the only way that we can get to awe is when we have safety. And when we're in nature, we get to open up our perspective broad and big and see the vastness of the world. And we're not overwhelmed by it. Instead, it brings a harmony to our life. And when you just start noticing, again, those little pieces of awe every single day, because it's not, as I said, it's not just what's in the periphery. You start noticing those little things like a baby's smile, like when you're walking out and about. It can actually just be when somebody slows down on the highway, believe it or not, and actually just let you in. And you might actually just thank them for being kind and considerate instead of being the road rage that we see nowadays. And it starts to bring a different perspective to our world. It slows us down to recognize what's important versus the chaos on the world where, you know what, we can rise above it and be a part of something that's much bigger and actually much more important.
You know, it's really interesting. What comes up for me as you say that is, you're right. We live in a time or in a place. It doesn't have to be time because there's different things in different parts of the world. But we live certainly here in the Western world, in the U.S. I'm in Canada, Western Europe. But we live in a time of urgency and rush and hurry and of unkindness and of lack of awareness and all of that kind of stuff. And it seems to be, well, that's just the way it is. But what you're telling me, and I agree with you, but you're saying even in the midst of all that, no matter where you are, you can create or enter into something that actually is also there, which is a space of peace. And you said nature brings you a complete menu of frequencies that are healthy for the body and for the mind and for the spirit. And so no matter where you are, you can enter that space and have it affect you in a positive way, even though other people around you might be experiencing something completely different, turmoil and agitation, and you don't have to participate in that agitation, which means that even in the midst of busyness, you have the opportunity to be at peace.
And I love what you actually just said there, is that you don't have to participate in the chaos. That is so important, because the reason why I love nature is that nature is the highest principles on this land. And when we follow nature's principles, and nature's always in a state of harmony, sometimes it's letting go, sometimes it's in growth. And when we start to understand our own rhythms in our own cycles, and we understand where we are in that cycle, we become present. And this is where, when we're out in nature, it actually, because it's harmonic, we have something in our body called mirror neurons. So we mimic what's around us. So when we see and we are in contact with something that's already in harmony, guess what? It's bringing harmony back into us. Mm-hmm. And that's why, to me, it's so important that, if life all of a sudden seems chaotic, whatever it may be, step outside, take a walk in a park, sit down, look at a tree, a flower, something in nature. And you know what? It's going to bring you right back. And we have a lot of techniques to bring us into presence. But if we start to live in a place of presence, not your perceived past, not your fearful future, but right here, right now, it doesn't matter what's going on in the rest of the world. And to me, that's what's so important. And that's where we also get to real decision making, because most stuff in life is not urgent, like you said. I mean, everybody's like urgent, even AI, like urgent. Like, no, it's not. What is actually going to bring you into coherence right now and bring you into the true of what is the next step you have to take? And it's really that easy.
It's really interesting because we carry this sense of urgency, as you described, and it feels that the environment that we have created around us has a lot of those elements. And the truth is, from the place of responding to that urgency, we are less creative, less insightful, less capable, less focused, not to mention less loving or compassionate or all those other good words. We're less of that. So when we respond to that urgency that is imposed around us, we get less done and we make more mistakes. And if you use the word slow down, take a moment to respond to absorb the frequencies, the balance, the sort of equilibrium piece, that you get clearer and better, and stuff happens better and faster anyway, as counterintuitive as that might seem to some. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was amazing that a few weeks ago, I brought a small group into the mountains for a mastermind in the mountains. And
Uh-huh.
we did a hike through the forest and came to this beautiful waterfall. And they came to such a place of presence, a place of awe, where we stopped talking. And shortly thereafter, they just mentioned that they were in such a state of peace. It's like they hadn't felt that level of peace in a very long time. And it was actually that they were able to feel themselves because they're so into their environment and trying to control everything around them. And as you said, it's like everything's urgent, where it's like everything just came together and you could actually feel your own breath again. And very few people take the time to do it, because it doesn't matter how many things on your to-do list, how big your projects are, if it's big deals, whatever it is, that if you can't find that place, and by the way, like, can you feel your big toes right now? Most people can't. Most people are all headspace, and I even love like heart-centered, but guess what? Even if you're heart and head, guess what? You're still missing the lower half of your body.
Right.
How fully connected are you? And that's really what's most important is bringing all these pieces together, because my journey to how I got here is that I was a trained scientist. I mean, I was all about the logic and the data and how the design studies and what it all meant. That in the parallel to my corporate world before I became an entrepreneur was that I slowly started to do outdoor adventures and outdoor activities. And little did I know, and now science actually backs up everything about being in nature, is that it slowly got me into my body that I never realized.
Mm-hmm.
I was an unathletic kid, and in a million years, I never thought I would have become a mountaineer.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is that along that process, I became a rock climber, and that was a moving meditation to me. Most people don't think they're like, people think it's scary. Like, how do you do that? I'm scared of heights. But what happened is that I slowly, actually, you have to coordinate your breath with your moves. You have to be present before you make a move. You have to understand that you're stable in your body, your holds, whether your foot or your feet. And because this was way before indoor gyms, I was touching earth. I was touching the rock. And I was so grounded both in my body and to the earth. It just came together naturally. And it wasn't until the retrospect of, why do I love this so much? Or why is it when I'm not outdoors and when I'm not climbing that it's an issue for me, that all of a sudden I realized why this became so important. And it's why I want to bring it to others now, is why moving in nature, but yet not the extreme that I used to do, but bringing it back down now is so important.
So good. I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to go there. You've clearly come to a place where you recognize the body and the earth connection, the importance of being in coherence and in connection with our entire bodies and all of the different systems and things. I had a guest the other day that was just talking about just all these numbers of systems and how important they all are. I'm sure you know that stuff too. But what nobody falls up that mountain. So if you were busy having a corporate, you rock climber, you don't fall up a mountain. If you had this other kind of career, what was the journey like? You alluded to just a little bit. You started doing outdoor activities, but what drove that? What was the process that led you to either feel the disconnect and look for something, or, intuitively understand that this isn't working, or whatever it is that led you on this journey to where you are an advocate for this and you're able to help others enjoy it?
So I've had a pretty wild life and wild career. And what I first realized is that I came from a childhood that was based in grief, suicidal thoughts. And that's actually what led me to, I didn't like psychologists, didn't like being put on psychiatric drugs as a kid, but I didn't commit suicide. And I wanted to know why I didn't, but other people did. And I know certainly right now in the mental health crisis that's in our country and this world is that suicidal teenagers are now actually committing at higher rates, and it's very detrimental for our society. But what I realized is that one, for me, the psychologist didn't work for me. So I wanted to just understand the biological basis of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I got a degree in neuroscience. It was actually when neuroplasticity was first being discovered, which was wild because guess what? In the time frame of me getting a bachelor's in neuroscience, we went from you couldn't regrow neurons to you could. Theories were debunked. We understood what neurotrophic factors are. I won't go into the deeper science of that, but it's the neuroplasticity of how we regrow neurons now. So my life was always this curiosity of like, what's possible and how can we get to the prevention and treatment, which led to getting a degree in public health of like, how can we design these different aspects? How can we intervene before things happen? Because as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people wait till they have heart attacks and strokes or relationships and 20, 30-year marriages end before they do anything about it. But for me, I was different. The theme of my life has been curiosity. So I've always just gone down show me what else is possible. Show me what else is possible. And in my corporate career, I then led into this. I was looking to make more friends in my mid-20s, and I found an outdoor club. And I love nature. I didn't know why. But it started a hike that became a 3-mile hike, that became a 5-mile hike, that became a 9-mile hike, that became steeper and then longer. And then I added rock climbing, and that became ice climbing. And then that became mountaineering. I didn't all of a sudden one day say, you know what? I want to go climb a 17,000-foot mountain today, and I'm going to create a strategic plan to do it. Nothing in my life, and the reason why I call my company Defy Logic is nothing in my life has ever been logical. Mm-hmm. The biggest achievements in my life were never really planned achievements. And even what led me to go climb or attempt a 19,000-foot mountain I was training to climb Mount Rainier again, which is a 14,000-foot mountain out in Washington State. And I was given the opportunity to then go join a team to go climb a 19,000-foot mountain. Again, It was because my preparation, and I know you've probably heard the same, my preparation met the opportunity.
Sure.
And this is just, I made it a point throughout, and I would have to say my corporate world burned me out several times, professional burnout, I can actually say that. But it was the nature that always kept me going. It was that I hiked or rock climbed on weekends. I made a point to go rock climbing midweek right outside of Washington, D.C., of all places. And I found that it was what grounded me. It was what brought me the socialization. It brought me outside. And it actually built my confidence and trust more than anything, because when you rock climb, it's actually about you versus yourself and no one else.
I love that you said trust, because I had a client last year who wrote a book about called Masters of Badassery, and she's a rock climber of terrifying things, and I don't know the numbering systems of 13 point E point something or other. I don't know, but you're all very, very technical and stuff like that. And she talked a lot about abandoning yourself. And that's what it came to me just now as you said that, when you have to trust yourself and meet yourself and get to the edge of what you can do and decide if you're going to trust yourself to do the thing, like the idea of sleeping in a tent halfway up El Cap isn't something I want to do. But that was like okay, this weekend, that's what we're doing. And it took them 2 or 3 days to do, El Cap and sleep in those things on the side of the rocks. But anyway, so that's what it reminded me of as you said that. So you started doing this thing and you found that it made you healthy. It brought you people, friends, centered you, and did the antithesis or took away the burnout that was apparently regularly threatening you, at least in terms of pushing on the corporate side, which is, of course, part of that imposed urgency. Mm-hmm. So where has that led you now? So now you mentioned Defy Logic as I think you said that was the name of a company. So you had that corporate experience, a balancing or at least partially balancing experience being outside and learning about nature. You did the studies about the mind and neurology, the nervous system and that sort of thing. And where has that brought you today? How do you integrate those things today in the way that you add good to the world, which is where we started?
So what I recognize is that when I did the outdoor adventures is, for me personally, it was challenging what I was capable of. So I kept testing what my limits were. Mm-hmm. And actually what I had to recognize is that over time, I actually didn't have to prove myself. I was actually trying to prove to myself what I was capable of, as opposed to what the rest of the world wanted me to do. Mm-hmm. But now I don't feel the need to do the extremes. I'm one of those people. I'm never going to say never. Okay. But do I have a 20,000 foot mountain I plan to climb right now? And the answer is no. Okay. I slow down and I enjoy my hike and I take pictures of the flowers and I jump in the waterfalls and I touch the trees and feel the wisdom that comes through, and can now sense the messages that are around me all the time. And that's the difference, is that over this time as well, is that I recognize that I was a high functioning neurodivergent. I was masking, had the same things. You're trying to prove yourself, what you're capable of. But I was sensing everything around me, but not myself. But it was being in nature that brought me to be in touch with myself. And then when I could operate from a state of presence within me and not from everything externally and having that validate me, I started operating differently. I started walking differently. And that's where I don't operate in the chaos. I don't operate because I know who I am, I know what I am, and I know how I serve. And very few people seem to actually know that these days. And that's where I call it more of having that decision advantage, because most people operate externally. They're looking for that external validation, whether it's the achievement or the proving. Yeah. But the thing is when they can actually start sensing the things that are actually going on within them. And I loved how you actually said the abandonment earlier, because most people, I'm not going to say all, whatever early life experiences brought them, they somehow started to abandon who they were. Mm-hmm. But when they start to show up and know who they are and actually start saying no to all the urgency and start knowing what your true priorities are, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
Well, that's really interesting, because when you describe the mountain in two different ways, like it is reflective of those two different kinds of energy. One way is conquering the mountain, which is a representation, at least in one way, of some external validation. I did this, I climbed that, whatever it is. And it can be mountain or it can be some other thing, but you were talking about mountains. But then you described a second way, which is you participated in the process of moving around on that object, which happens to be a mountain, meaning the trees and the messages and the vibrations and things. And so one seems to be more I would say, ego-driven or external validation-driven. I conquered this, as opposed to allowing yourself, what you described now, is to participate in the beingness with that object, which is, in your case, a mountain. I'm not describing that very well, but to me, it was a very a clear difference in how you approach the mountain.
Yeah. And the thing is the way I see it is, whether you're on the mountain or if you're just walking about in daily life, is there are signs being given to us all the time. Mm-hmm. And the question is, especially if you're neurodivergent, you tend to see all the signs, and neurodivergents are highly perceptive. But if you're coming from a place of hypervigilance and am I safe, you're always scanning for safety, versus knowing that if you're in a state of awe, you are safe. And you're not scanning for the safety around you. And when you know you're safe and you know you're protected, you start noticing the symbols that then are important to you. Maybe it was a conversation somebody had with you that it was a complete stranger, or maybe you overheard something, and then you overheard the same thing 24 hours later. And then you get on a conversation with somebody else and you go, oh, wow, that came full circle, because this concept is now being talked about with whoever you're having a conversation with right now. Mm-hmm. And it becomes wild. And you start noticing those little pieces, those little subtle energies, those little subtle frequencies that are meant to be how you're supposed to start showing up in the world, and how your presence and how you're meant to radiate.
Tell me a little bit about two things. One is, you've referenced being neurodivergent a couple of times, and there may be people on here that know exactly what that is or share that description with you. Tell the listeners a little bit about what that is, how it affects both you, yourself, and also how you interact with others. And then I want to get to, well, let's just do that first. I have another topic, but I want to do that. Tell me a little bit about that. What is that?
Thank you. So neurodivergence, there tends to be a lot of different classifications of things, and in full disclosure, I don't like labels, quite frankly.
Okay. I'm just curious because I don't know that I know for sure what you mean.
So generally, it's people who are highly perceptive. They have very good depth perception. So their perception is very deep. They can connect the dots, and they may or may not be sensitive. They can be what's called, autistic, on the spectrum. And that kind of can come with a lot of different labels these days. ADHD is now a part of it, and even sometimes bipolar is. But the idea is that they have a level of depth perception that most people don't have, which means that not only do they see everything, they feel everything, but they kind of come on two sides. They're super sensitive and they see everything like a drop right now. If there was something that's dropping right behind you right now, they would see it and feel it and how it affect their body. But then you also have the other side where they're super logical, where they don't have the feelings and emotions, but they're so, it's like the boss smart. They're so wicked smart that they are almost too good for their own knowing, and they see the connections, and they're the programmers, engineers, and the scientists, and it doesn't mean it's all of them.
Somebody said a description that might fit. This individual described it as being that side as being born without social software in the operating system, right? And in that way, in other words, very intelligent, but without the nuances of social software in terms of how to use that or integrate that. Well, I thought that was an interesting description.
It's very possible they come on both sides. Mm-hmm. But the thing is they sometimes do have it. They just don't know how to actually access it.
Ah, okay. Well, now that you know that, and that discovery was probably something that cost you a lot of work and earning and understanding and maybe misunderstanding about what was going on and why this and why that. What do you do? So you know that about yourself, And you now, because you know that, you're able to manage it differently than if you didn't know it. So tell me how your work, tell me what you do with that. You've had a corporate background, you've suffered burnout, you've realized that you're a neurodivergent in this way and have these different levels of perception. So back to where we said, what do you turn that into in your magic? So when you put all that, roll all that together, what does it become?
So when neurodivergents learn how to become a solid sphere instead of having, we'll say, their antennas everywhere, and they become more of that clear laser beam, they start to work in their brilliance instead of from the deficits and struggles. It becomes their superpower instead of the kryptonite. Because sensitivity, even when they're not on the super logic side, becomes too much. They don't want to be outside. They're isolated. Too many people. They don't want to interact because it's too much and it becomes overwhelming. But when you can turn that overwhelm into a place where they know what to receive and then discern and apply that discernment to all their decisions in their life, they start working from a place of knowing, and it bypasses the mind, and you just know what to do all the time in the moment. And you don't have to think. You don't need mindset techniques. You know all about that. You don't have to do all this extra stuff. You just walk in a place where you trust your inner knowing, you trust what you receive, and you know how to decipher the inputs. And that will change your decisions. It'll affect your health. It'll affect your relationships. It will affect your business. I mean, it comes into a place where I can see the energy dynamics anywhere. It can be in a boardroom. It can be facilitating a retreat. It can be the interactions in a grocery store. It can be interactions in a Zoom meeting, because I see all these little things. And that's where neurodivergents thrive. They see all these little things. But when you learn to focus on only what's most important and not everything that's urgent, like we just discussed, it is night and day difference.
So that sounds like, to start with, I may be not knowing what in my particular makeup, I have too many inputs. I don't know what's important. It's overwhelming, and it makes me want to retreat, either actually or mentally or emotionally or something. And when I understand not only what it is, but how to filter into what's important and trust the noise, trust that I understand intuitively the difference between external noise and internal intuition, then that puts me, if I understand you correctly, in a place of clarity where not only do I know what to do, but then I have the courage to just move forward and do that. And that allows me to be more effective in decisions across a broad spectrum of things. You mentioned relationships and business and personal things and whatever, but you have an ability to get things done and to do the right things. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, you have an ability to trust your inner knowing. And a lot of people tend to trust intuition, and then they go, oh, that didn't go right, because they actually can't decipher what all the inputs are. And they don't even know really what their actual intuition is. But it's also about bridging your intuition and your intelligence together. So you're not just right-brained or left-brained, but it's the neuroplasticity coming together to work in harmony together. So you actually have the discernment from a place of presence. And from there, you can move forward.
So you've mentioned presence several times. And as I hear you say that again right here, what it feels like to me, and you correct this if this is wrong, is the ability to ignore or filter out all of the things that would pull me away from being present energetically. And that means being here in the now, in this place, and, not somewhere else or when else, but here now. And then filter the things that don't matter out, which allows me to then see more clearly, because all this extraneous stuff it's there, but I'm not acknowledging it. It's not coming in to the field. And that allows me to marry, as you said, the intelligence with the intuition to get to a place of clarity and decisiveness.
Absolutely. And that's where in my TEDx talk, The Keys to Innate Intelligence, I bring these concepts together. And what we're talking about in particular that I brought up, it's called purify. And we need to purify our inputs. The problem is a lot of people tend to filter based on past bad experiences, or as I said before, like the fearful future. But when we purify from presence versus the other sides of the spectrum, it starts to change everything. And it's from there that we can start narrowing down and becoming more precise in what we're doing.
So I like the idea of innate intelligence. So now we've talked a lot about the things that you have learned. And you talked about having given a TEDx talk, which is fantastic, and accessing your innate intelligence, which would be the marriage of the holistic marriage of everything that you have. Talk about what what you want people to know, like where to find you, what your work is, your company, the services you might offer, anything about that sort of thing that you want to have people understand or be able to make concrete the benefits for them that they might get.
Yeah. Well, people can find me at defylogic.com, the logic with a K. And I'll be offering a masterclass. So defylogic.com/masterclass on what I'm calling the over it system, because we are cognitively overloaded, emotionally overwhelmed, and physically exhausted. And let's get past the being over it, because our lives aren't going the way we want. And it's about understanding how to move forward. So I also deliver masterminds in the mountains, because when we come into these places of nature, it's very important that you can understand your own perception and bring that to a closer place. And then also for businesses, I will also serve as a strategic advisor, because I can see the energy dynamics that are ongoing in any business from there.
So you've mentioned Defy Logic /masterclass. If I just go to defylogic.com, is there a button that I can push to get to masterclass, or do I have to remember the whole URL?
Right now you have to remember the whole okay. URL, but it'll bring you right there.
All right, defylogic.com /masterclass. Having known Lora for a little while, a couple of years, I think that I would recommend that you go check that out. What I also heard is that you offer strategic advising, and in that context, especially when you have a group of executives or a board or something, and you have all the different sets of perceptions and ability to see or not see that each person has, the ability to understand the dynamics and see what's going on in the room is going to be very valuable. And you also mentioned masterminds in the mountains. So if somebody hears this and they want to go to a mastermind in the mountains, or they have some kind of a need, where would they go to find out more or to be able to talk to you about that?
Just come to my website at defylogic.com and drop me a message, and I'd love to chat with you.
Okay, good. So do that, defylogic.com, and drop Lora a message. So I want to ask now a sort of an open-ended question. What didn't I ask you, or what didn't we talk about that you would really like people to know intuitively? What did we leave out that should be added to or expanded on about what we talked about so far?
No matter where you are in your life, your business, or career, know that you have gifts, innate gifts, that you have never even tapped into. And these gifts are world-changing, game-changing. And when you access these gifts from a place of presence, your entire world and perception will change on what's possible.
So in the woo-woo space of personal development, people say a lot of things about you can create anything you want and blah, blah, blah. And I don't disagree with the truth of that, but people say that stuff all the time. But what I'm hearing you say is every person listening right now has some innate gifts. Some of them you may know, and some of them, as Lora said, you may not have tapped at all, Or if you've had an inkling, you've downplayed them or disbelieved them or pushed them aside or whatever. So I'm hearing an invitation to explore the gifts that you have and combine that with your determination to be present. In other words, not influenced by stuff you're worrying about in the past or the fearful future, as you call it, but to be what you get if you're calm in nature by a waterfall or wherever it takes, so that you can feel the truth of that energy and the possibility of those gifts. Did I get that invitation even close?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. So in a final closing thought that you would, I really enjoy what you're saying, and I agree. When I called it the woo-woo weird stuff, I'm not downplaying any of it because I live in that universe. So, but I do acknowledge that there's a lot of that stuff that gets talked about, neuroplasticity and, law of attraction and dork stick and whatever. And the truth is, most of the time it bounces off because we are not present, because we're hearing it in the midst of all this other frequency and confusion and noise, and not in a way that allows us to hear it truly with our true selves. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. And I think this is where, and you and I both come from this world, is how are you listening? And what is the quality for which you listen? I mean, Kellan, you certainly already know this, you exemplify this, is that, are you listening just so you can speak? Are you listening to then add in your own experience? Are you listening to add value? Or are you listening to just be a place of presence and a witness and an observer to the other person? Because when we start coming from this place of an observer perspective, again, it doesn't matter the chaos in the world. It's about bringing this, being an observer, and we even start understanding where we're coming from, how the other person is coming from. Because even in this conversation right now, it's more than you and me. There's a combination that's both of us together right now. So there's actually 3 people here. And we can go off on a rabbit hole, but when we just come from a listening and observer, we start recognizing some of our own stuff that may be going on, some of the stuff that other people are going on, because we have no clue whatever is going on with other people. And we're going to start operating in a different way. And that's where the world is moving, is we are moving to a higher state of consciousness, a higher state, of observation. And we're going to start having very different perspectives on how we can all move forward in a very different way.
Lora, I want to thank you for being with us today and for sharing your heart and your experience and the truths that you know to be true.
Thank you so much, Kellan. It's been an honor to share this with you and your audience, and always wishing you much success, and everybody who listens, that we just learn how to operate in our brilliance and showcase and be in a place of presence.
So listeners, I want you to go back and listen a couple of times here, because the invitation is to sort the noise. Some of it might be inside of you, a lot of it's coming from outside, but there is an inner knowing and a truth. It is your actual essence and presence that you can access, and only you can access it. And it is in that place that you can hear truth and understand and know what to do. And those qualities and that movement will help you as you move forward to create your ultimate life.
Right now, your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe, share,